Pleasant environment. Get ready for a healthy activity. Friendly atmosphere yields tremendous output. Poor surroundings. Challenges of today's world. Melting glaciers. Global warming is increasing.
बिस्मिल्लाहिर्रहमानिर्रहीम। अस्सलाम वालेकुम स्टूडेंट्स। उम्मीद करता हूँ कि आप सब लोग खैरियत के साथ होंगे एंड आई वेलकम यू ऑल हियर टुडे टू द थर्ड लेक्चर ऑफ एनवायरमेंटल साइकोलॉजी। स्टूडेंट्स, आज के हमारे लेक्चर का टाइटल है थियरीज ऑफ एनवायरमेंटल साइकोलॉजी। लेकिन इससे पहले कि मैं आपको इस लेक्चर के डिटेल्स के बारे में बताऊँ, लेट अस टॉक अबाउट व्हाट वी डिस्कस्ड इन आवर लास्ट लेक्चर। हमारे लास्ट लेक्चर में क्योंकि हमारा वक्त ख़त्म हो चुका था, इसलिए चंद टॉपिक्स हमारे लास्ट लेक्चर से बच गए थे। मैं चाहूँगा कि आज उनको भी ख़त्म कर लें ताकि हम मुकम्मल तौर पे अपने तीसरे लेक्चर की तरफ जा सकें। फ्रेंड्स, हमारा लास्ट लेक्चर शुरू हुआ था विद रेफरेंस टू कॉमन असम्पशंस ऑफ एनवायरमेंटल साइकोलॉजी, और यहाँ पर हमने बात शुरू की थी इस तरह से कि एनवायरनमेंट सब्जेक्ट मैटर है बहुत सारे डिफरेंट प्रोफेशनल्स का, जो अपने सब्जेक्ट मैटर के हिसाब से एनवायरनमेंट को स्टडी करने की कोशिश करते हैं। लेकिन जब बहुत सारे प्रोफेशनल्स एनवायरनमेंट को डिस्कस कर रहे होते हैं, उस वक्त भी चंद कॉमन असम्पशंस ऐसी हैं, यानी कि चंद कॉमन फैक्टर्स ऐसे हैं कि कोई भी प्रोफेशनल एनवायरनमेंट के बारे में जब बात करे तो ये फैक्टर्स उसके जहन में ज़रूर होते हैं। सो दीज वर द कॉमन असम्पशंस ऑफ एनवायरमेंटल साइकोलॉजी। ये कॉमन असम्पशंस 5 थी जो कुछ इस तरह से थी। नंबर 1 वाज द अर्थ इज़ ओनली सूटेबल हैबिटेट दैट वी हैव। इसका मतलब है कि इंसानों को ज़िंदगी गुजारने के लिए सिर्फ प्लैनेट अर्थ ही मौजूद है। इसके अलावा हमारे पास कोई और ऑप्शन अगर है तो वो इतनी दूर है कि हमें अव्वल तो उसका पता नहीं है, और अगर हमें पता भी हो तो शायद वहाँ तक पहुँचना हमारे लिए अभी तक तकरीबन नामुमकिन सी बात है। स्टूडेंट्स, जो दूसरी कॉमन असम्पशन हमने डिस्कस की थी दैट वाज अर्थ रिसोर्सेज आर लिमिटेड। इस प्लैनेट पर ज़िंदगी गुजारने के लिए हमें इस ज़मीन पर पाए जाने वाले रिसोर्सेज की बहुत ज़्यादा ज़रूरत है, और अगर ये रिसोर्सेज ना हो तो इस प्लैनेट पर लाइफ एग्जिस्ट नहीं कर सकती। सो इन अ वे वी कैन से दैट प्लैनेट अर्थ इज़ अ यूनिक प्लैनेट बिकॉज इट प्रोवाइड्स द लाइफ सपोर्टिंग सिस्टम दैट इज़ रिक्वायर्ड बाय ऑल द स्पीशीज हू वांट टू लिव देयर लाइफ ऑन अर्थ। बट the resources of the earth are very, very limited, and these resources are being shared by so many species as well as human beings, which are the number one species on earth, जो पिछले कई सैकड़ों हज़ारों लाखों साल से यहाँ पर ज़िंदगी गुजार रहे हैं और अर्थ के रिसोर्सेज को शेयर कर रहे हैं। लेकिन यहाँ पर हमने ये बात की कि इंसानों की ज़िंदगी मुसलसल तरक्की का नाम है, और हमने पिछले सैकड़ों सालों में बेशुमार तरक्की की, जिसकी वजह से हमने अपने प्लैनेट अर्थ के एनवायरनमेंट को भी बहुत ज़्यादा इम्पैक्ट किया, और हमने ये सोचना शुरू किया कि क्या हमारी तरक्की की वजह से हमने अपने एनवायरनमेंट को फ़ायदा पहुँचाया या नुकसान पहुँचाना शुरू किया। स्टूडेंट्स, this was naturally the third point of our common assumption that the earth as a planet has been and continues to be profoundly affected by life. इस planet पर जो ज़िंदगी जारी है और जिस तरह से मुख्तलिफ स्पीशीज़ यहाँ पर ज़िंदगी गुजार रहे हैं, वो कॉन्स्टेंटली इस planet के रिसोर्सेज को शेयर कर रहे हैं, जिसकी वजह से रिसोर्सेज आहिस्ता आहिस्ता ख़त्म हो सकते हैं। लेकिन एक कुदरत का नेचुरल प्रोसेस ऐसा भी है जिसके ज़रिए बाज़ औक़ात स्पीशीज़ एक्सटेंड हो जाती हैं। स्टूडेंट्स, जो चौथा पॉइंट हमने डिस्कस किया था दैट वाज द इफेक्ट ऑफ लैंड यूज बाय ह्यूमंस टेंड्स टू बी क्यूमुलेटिव। लैंड को जिस तरह से हम यूज़ करते हैं, क्योंकि लैंड हमारा बुनियादी रिसोर्स है, यहाँ से हम अपनी एनर्जी हासिल करते हैं। ना सिर्फ वो एनर्जी हमें अपने मुख्तलिफ गैजेट्स को चलाने में मदद देती है, बल्कि इंसानों की बुनियादी खुराक का बंदोबस्त भी लैंड से होता है। आई मीन टू से एग्रीकल्चर। और एग्रीकल्चर के लिए हमारी लैंड आहिस्ता आहिस्ता, क्योंकि हम इसके रिसोर्सेज को बहुत तेज़ी से इस्तेमाल कर रहे हैं, आहिस्ता आहिस्ता ये इनकैपेबल होती जा रही है, जिसकी वजह से हमारे एरेबल लैंड्स जो हैं या सेमी एरेबल लैंड्स जो हैं वो आहिस्ता आहिस्ता ऐसी लैंड्स के अंदर तब्दील हो रही हैं जो बंजर ज़मीनें हैं, जहाँ पर शायद फसलें ग्रो अप ना की जा सकें। Friends, the fifth most important point that we discussed in the common assumptions was sustained life on Earth is a characteristic of ecosystem and not of individual organisms or populations. इसका मतलब ये है no species is complete unto itself. कोई भी स्पीशी यहाँ पर खुद से ज़िंदगी नहीं गुजार सकती। यहाँ पर ज़िंदगी गुजारने के लिए एक इंटर रिलेशनशिप है बिटवीन डिफरेंट अदर स्पीशीज एज वेल एज विद द नेचुरल एनवायरनमेंट दैट इज प्रोवाइडेड ऑन प्लैनेट अर्थ। और ये सारी चीज़ों का आपस में एक इंटर रिलेशनशिप है, और किसी एक स्पीशी को कुछ इम्पैक्ट होता है तो वो इम्पैक्ट दूसरी स्पीशीज़ तक आस्ता आस्ता ट्रैवल करना शुरू हो जाता है, और इवेंचुअली ये इम्पैक्ट एनवायरनमेंट तक भी जाता है। तो हम एज अ स्पीशी, इंसान इस प्लैनेट अर्थ के ऊपर आर पार्ट एंड पार्सल ऑफ दिस एकोसिस्टम। और यहाँ पर एनवायरमेंटलिस्ट इस बात की ज़रूरत महसूस करते हैं कि इंसानों को इस एकोसिस्टम के पर्सपेक्टिव में स्टडी किया जाना चाहिए। इंसानों को should be studied as one species along with many other species। और जब हम इंसानों को इस तरह से स्टडी करने की कोशिश करते हैं तो हमारे सामने ये बात क्लियरली वाज़ेह होती है कि इंसानों का इम्पैक्ट हमारे एनवायरनमेंट के ऊपर बहुत ज़्यादा रहा है। हम अक्सर सोचते हैं कि ये इम्पैक्ट बहुत पॉजिटिव है, लेकिन हमने अपनी एनवायरनमेंट को ग्रेजुअली विद द पैसेज ऑफ टाइम तरक्की का सफ़र तय करते वक्त डिग्रेड भी किया है। और हम इस एनवायरमेंटल डिग्रेडेशन को किस तरह से रोक सकते हैं थ्रू चेंजिंग द ह्यूमन बिहेवियर। स्टूडेंट्स, वी देन वेंट ऑन टू टॉकिंग अबाउट करंट इन्फ्लुएंसेस ऑन एनवायरमेंटल साइकोलॉजी। दुनिया में इस वक्त क्या ऐसी चीज़ें हो रही हैं जो एनवायरमेंटलिस्ट को सोचने पर मजबूर करती हैं। मसलन क्या ऐसे चैलेंजेस दरपेश हैं जो आजकल के ज़माने के चैलेंजेस हैं जिसकी वजह से एनवायरनमेंट के ऊपर बहुत ज़्यादा असर पड़ रहा है। And I told you that I just split these different influences in 4 main points. And those 4 main points were like this. Number 1 was population trends. Population पूरी दुनिया के इंसानों की आहिस्ता आहिस्ता तेज़ी से बढ़ती जा रही है। ख़ासतौर पर थर्ड वर्ल्ड कंट्रीज़ के अंदर पॉपुलेशन एक्सप्लोजन है, और थर्ड वर्ल्ड कंट्रीज़ के अंदर पॉपुलेशन बहुत तेज़ी से बढ़ती जा रही है। लेकिन अगर हम वेस्टर्न वर्ल्ड की तरफ देखें तो बाज़ कंट्रीज़ ऐसे हैं जिन्होंने अपनी पॉपुलेशन ग्रोथ को ना सिर्फ कंट्रोल कर लिया है बल्कि सस्टेन भी कर लिया है। और एंड अदर अमेजिंग थिंग इज़ दैट सम ऑफ द कंट्रीज़ इन द वेस्टर्न वर्ल्ड आर सच कंट्रीज़ जहाँ पर पॉपुलेशन ग्रोथ एक्चुअली डेफिसिट के अंदर जा रही है, which is why we constantly hear about different migration programs that are being offered by the first world countries to the citizens of the third world countries. तो पॉपुलेशन के अंदर क्या ट्रेंड्स हैं, पॉपुलेशन किस तरह से इम्पैक्ट कर रही है, दैट इज़ अ मेजर चैलेंज दैट एनवायरमेंटलिस्ट आर थिंकिंग अबाउट। द सेकेंड मेजर चैलेंज वाज रिसोर्स डिप्लीशन एंड एनवायरमेंटल डिटेरियोरेशन। स्टूडेंट्स, ये वो टॉपिक था जिसको डिस्कस करते वक्त हमारा वक्त ख़त्म हो चुका था, और यहाँ से आज हम इस टॉपिक को थोड़ा सा डिटेल के अंदर डिस्कस करेंगे। The third important topic, or the third important event that's impacting environmental psychology and that's shaping up the thinking of environmentalists is public policy and the environment. Because once there's so much population growth and there is constant environmental degradation, then how can we control it? How can we harness this process? To harness this process, one individual will not be enough. One community will not be enough. Not even a country will be enough. This has to be a collective effort of the entire planet, which means all of the countries globally trying to achieve their environmental objectives. और जब हम पब्लिक पॉलिसी की बात करते हैं तो यहाँ पर हमारा चौथा फैक्टर बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट हो जाता है कि ह्यूमन बिहेवियर को किस तरह से चेंज किया जा सकता है, उसके अंदर किस तरह से इम्प्रूवमेंट पैदा की जा सकती है कि एनवायरनमेंट के ऊपर एक पॉजिटिव इम्पैक्ट पैदा हो। स्टूडेंट्स, जब हम बात करते हैं एनवायरमेंटल डिग्रेडेशन की, तो यहाँ पर हमारा बुनियादी मकसद होता है टू टॉक अबाउट रिसोर्स डिप्लीशन, रीजनल वाटर शॉर्टेजेस एंड डिटेरियोरेटिंग वाटर क्वालिटीज एज वेल एज केमिकल वेस्ट। सो you have heard that 3 points are very very important here. Number 1 is resource depletion. जब हम resource depletion की बात करते हैं, जैसा कि आप स्लाइड की तरफ देख सकते हैं, resource depletion में हम सबसे पहले बात करते हैं erosion of agricultural soil, which is shown by salinization of highly productive irrigated farmlands. A lot of deforestation is taking place. There is a lot of lake acidification, and this is usually the problem of the developed countries of the world, because there is such industrial revolution has taken place over there, and industry is working so hard and so much and so intense in making new gadgets and new weapons. So many things are coming, because of which there is so much toxic waste coming out of the factories, and there is no way to dispose these toxic elements into the environment. So out of a certain process, acid rain has a constant fall on the planet Earth. Because of the acid rain, there is lake acidification, and lake acidification is causing the polluted poisoned water which people, if they drink, will create very hazardous effects on their health and on their physiology. Students, there has been an extensive loss of the tropical forests as well. And few top victims in this area are the regions of the Amazon rivers. You might have heard about the Amazon River, which is the largest natural environment available to the world these days. It's jungle environment and it carries the largest number of species available on the planet Earth. And in these days, a lot of deforestation is taking place in this natural habitat, this natural environment. And that's all because of the hazardous effects of so much industrialization taking place, not only in the developed countries, but in the third world countries as well. So, based upon the deforestation, there will be huge impact on the ecosystem. There will be huge impact on the different species that are sharing this ecosystem collectively. Students, when we talk about permanent soil degradation, that means the earth will eventually lose its capability to grow up the crops, which means that erosion will take place. Semi-arable lands and arable lands would gradually get down to simply bare earth, which will have no capacity to grow up any sort of crop. Another very negative impact is coming up in the shape of water shortages and deterioration of the water qualities. Because human beings have spread so fast and there has been such a population growth over the last, let's say, about 100 years now, that the water resources are also depleting. A lot of times it is because of the population, but a lot of other times we are actually wasting our water resources because of so much industry coming up. और इतनी ज़्यादा इंडस्ट्री के आने की वजह से जो वाटर reservoirs हैं वो constantly pollute हो रहे हैं because most of the times these industries are throwing their toxic waste, dumping their toxic waste actually into these water reservoirs. So एक मुख्तात अंदाजे के मुताबिक increase of 200 to 300% in the world water withdrawals in the next 20 years are forecasted, which means कि जितना पानी आजकल हम withdraw कर रहे हैं अर्थ से उसके अंदर तकरीबन 200 से 300% तक इजाफा होने के चांसेस हैं in the next only 20 years. 20 years is a very short time period, so that means catastrophe is just lying next door. Then another problem which can be connected in the way that there is always political crisis related to the water shortages as well. And that comes in the shape sometimes that 200 major river basins of the world, out of those 200, 148 are shared only by 2 countries. And the rest are shared by the 52 countries. So, as you have seen, or a historian might tell you, that the wars in the past usually have been upon these natural resources, and different civilizations have grown up near the river basins. Water has been one of the prime resource that every civilization has been searching for, and wherever they find rivers, their civilizations have always grown up, developed, and progressed. Students, the third most dangerous factor is chemical waste. Chemical waste is being produced at rates faster than we can safely dispose them of. इतनी ज़्यादा chemical waste है कि हम उसको dispose नहीं कर पाते और इससे पहले ही मज़ीद chemical waste बाहर आ जाती है. And when we are talking about the nuclear plants, we can think about the Chernobyl crisis, that was a nuclear power plant crisis in Russia, which is called Chernobyl, as well as we can talk about certain nuclear power plant crises in places like Bhopal in India. So these examples actually told the world that industrialization can have really negative and dire impact upon the environments. Another important point is that non-renewable resources are being constantly depleted. What are non-renewable resources? For example, oil. For example, the coal. These are our energy resources. और जब हम इनको constantly इस्तेमाल कर रहे हैं तो हम world को deplete कर रहे हैं इन resources से, क्योंकि ये वो resources हैं जिनको हम दोबारा से create नहीं कर सकते. और अगर हम non-renewable resources की बात करते हैं तो बाज़ औक़ात जो लैंड की फर्टिलिटी होती है जो आहिस्ता आहिस्ता ख़त्म होती जाती है, देयर कम्स अ पॉइंट जहाँ पर हम उस फर्टिलिटी को अगर वापस लाने की कोशिश करें तो दैट विल टेक अस अ लॉन्ग टाइम. मे बी we need to develop a lot in terms of technology as well as our understanding of the soil to reverse that process, which is presently seems is not possible for us. So students, you might have seen captured the 3 most important challenges that the modern day environmentalists are facing, sensing, and they are doing their studies and researches around these 3 points. And these 3 points are resource depletion, regional water shortages, as well as chemical waste. What to do with this? And in an effort to search out solutions for these challenges, fields like environmental psychology and other related fields of environment are progressing and gradually getting more and more data that would help them find out different directions. Students, जब हम environmental degradation की बात करते हैं तो आइए मैं आपको पाकिस्तान की environment के बारे में चंद figures बताता चलूँ. As all of us know, carbon dioxide is very very dangerous for us. जब हम breathing करते हैं, we inhale oxygen, and when we exhale, then we are breathing out carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide is a very dangerous gas for human beings. And when we talk about the carbon dioxide total emission in the world, let's say about 100 years ago. 100 years ago, there were no cars, and fuel was being consumed in very, very conventional engines that were being used at that particular time. But today, there are many sophisticated and modern engines which are being used not only in the cars, but aircrafts, spacecrafts, trains, planes. So there is so much stuff coming in these days. And when all of this stuff is being consumed, the carbon dioxide is emitted into the air as a byproduct of the natural burning process. And carbon dioxide is very, very dangerous for the health of any living creature. In Pakistan, the emission of carbon dioxide per capita in 2002 has been 0.7 metric tons. And if you talk about natural habitats, then we have consumed 37% of our natural habitat. We are left with 63% of our natural habitat these days. Students, you have captured the environmental situation. Now let us go on towards the third point, which is public policy and environment. पब्लिक पॉलिसी के ज़रिए इन्वायरमेंट को किस तरह से इम्पैक्ट किया जा सकता है. नेचुरली एक इंसान इस इन्वायरमेंट की जंग नहीं लड़ सकता. शायद एक कम्युनिटी या एक मुल्क भी इस इन्वायरमेंट की जंग को नहीं लड़ सकता. दरअसल ये ह्यूमन बींग्स की एक कलेक्टिव एफर्ट होनी चाहिए. But when we talk about the collective efforts on the part of the human beings, we are actually talking about all of the countries of the world. If you look at it, all of the countries of the world, then you'll find out that there is a lot of political conflict and political crisis going on between different countries. And a lot of times, there is an extensive arms race, an extensive industrialization race, but there has never been a race to save the planet Earth. So, because of this political crisis, there is a dire need that we could come up not only with national public policies in different individual countries to monitor the resources, but also an international or global policy that would monitor the environment of the planet Earth. But so far, this has been very, very difficult and challenging process. However, over the last 25 years, many efforts are being organized. And let us hope that before we run out of time, we actually could come together, develop a consensus on how to progress in this area. Students, जब हम public policy की बात करते हैं, public policy is an instrument that regulates the behavioral patterns of the people in a certain country, in a certain community. और public policy में जिस चीज़ पर ज़्यादा गौर हो रहा है, वो है preserving the carrying capacity of the earth. Better ways are being tried to be developed that the earth's carrying capacity could be restored. Earth's carrying capacity split could be properly divided. And the directions in this area have been, number one, mandating forestation, reforestation after cutting a forest. Now, when we think about forest provides us with our natural fuel. We get our wood from the forest. We get our oxygen from the forests. Any forest is full of greenery, and when plants are breathing, they are exhaling oxygen and inhaling carbon dioxide. The forest is a great resource for any community available. Now, if deforestation is taking place, then that means that we are not only losing on our energy resources, but we are running short of our good environment as well. And this is a surprising thing that these days deforestation is taking place at a faster pace than it has ever taken place before in the history. Now, how do we reserve this process? Deforestation की process को किस तरह से reverse किया जा सकता है? इसके लिए ज़रूरी है कि जब भी फॉरेस्ट के अंदर कटिंग हो, इस पॉलिसी को मैंडेटरी बना दिया जाए कि रिफॉरेस्टेशन की जाएगी. As many trees you pull out, as many trees you dig in. That is the only way that in certain time period there will be a natural balance between deforestation and reforestation. Students, forestation की जब हम बात करते हैं तो यहाँ से अगर थोड़ा सा आगे बढ़ें तो we should also talk about the soil management. What is soil management? If you ask a farmer what is soil, farmer would say soil is my mother because it provides me with my livelihood. Because myself, my ancestors and my generations have been tilling the lands for all this while, and land provides me with all of my basic resources. Land is very, very important for a farmer. But is the soil being cultivated properly? Or in order to fulfill the needs of the growing population, more crops are being tried to cultivate on one piece of land? Eventually what will happen that because of recultivation over and over again, and because of the negative impacts of the industrialization, and because we are running out of our water resources, our land soil quality would gradually go down. So we need to come up with methods जिनके अंदर इस किस्म की सोच विचार का अमल बहुत ज़्यादा कारफरमा हो कि हम अपनी लैंड सॉइल की कैपेसिटी को कैसे रिटेन कर सकते हैं. So public policy instruments are also trying to address these issues. Students, what can policies do? Policy changes coupled with government business and individual actions can do much to alleviate these problems, which means that it starts from individual, it encompasses the business concerns, and then it encompasses the government policy. Now, if you try to chart out a sequence between the three, you can say it goes from individual to communities, which could be business communities that are constantly developing their industry. And in order to meet with the growing demands of the growing population, industry is working overtime. And if industry is working overtime, then that means more toxic waste is coming out of the industry. And if industry is going on like that, unbridled, unharnessed by any particular law, then this will naturally not work out. So there comes the role of the government as well. And role of the government comes in the shape of a public policy. So public policy regulates the working of the industry, as well as public policy is also addressing the issue that how can we change the behavior of a certain individual? How can we change the behavioral pattern of an individual? If you look around yourself, let's say you are visiting a great industrial city of Pakistan. Let's suppose you are visiting Karachi. You will find out the huge land areas which are filled with black color shopper bags. Those black color shopper bags are poison not only for earth but for the environment, because that shopper bag would never consume. It can never be recycled, and if we have to recycle it, that probably is going to take us hundreds of years. And once that black shopper bag goes into the earth, it permanently damages its quality. The soil quality is damaged. Now the thing is that where is this black shopper bag coming in from? Who is making these black shopper bags, and how these black shopper bags are being taken by so many people, being used by so many people in the retail shops as well as other business concerns? Is it a question of attitude? Can we go to those people and tell them that this shopper bag is very dangerous for your environment? Well, if you're brave enough and you try this, then you go to the people and start educating them on the use of the black shopper bags. You'll find out you'll come across resistance, because first of all, the industry that is making those black shopper bags would naturally have its financial stakes into it. If they are not making that, then what are they going to make? Then naturally, someone who's educating them will have to also educate them that what is the alternate source of income for them. And people who are so much used to that black shopper bags, what are you going to give them as an alternate? That's a question of huge concern. So whenever public policy is talking about regulating people's behaviors, then that means we have to come up with a huge attitude change in the way people conduct themselves while they are interacting with their environments. और जब हम इस तरह की बात करते हैं तो एटीट्यूड एक ऐसी चीज़ है जो इंसानों के अंदर एजुकेशन के साथ चेंज होता है, जो इंसानों के अंदर अवेयरनेस कैंपेन्स के साथ चेंज होता है, लेकिन एटीट्यूड चेंज इज़ ऑलवेज वेरी वेरी डिफ़िकल्ट. द क्वेश्चन इज़, अगर हम इस तरह की एटीट्यूड चेंज कैंपेन्स को रन करते हैं, वेयर आर वी गोइंग टू गेट द फाइनेंशियल रिसोर्सेज फॉर दैट? Because naturally, we will have to do a lot of education that reaches out to all of the people within the community, and in order to mobilize those communities for a certain action, we have to roll in a lot of resources, and that requires money. Simple as that. And how are we going to do that? So students, आपको इस डिस्कशन से ये समझ आई होगी कि जब हम पब्लिक पॉलिसी बनाते हैं तो पब्लिक पॉलिसी के अंदर हमें सारी चीज़ों को एड्रेस करना होता है. और आजकल मुख्तलिफ ममालिक के अंदर, स्पेशली इन द डेवलप्ड कंट्रीज, पब्लिक पॉलिसीज आर वेरी कॉग्निजेंट. इट अपीयर्स that the public policies are very cognizant of the environmental concerns, but then we also come to know that the greatest polluters of this world are actually the greatest nations who have developed so much. So this discussion might have given you a very good idea about public policy and how public policy comes and plays its role in the environmentalists' movements, environmentalists' battle, war to safeguard environment of this planet Earth. Students, यहाँ से हम बात को थोड़ा सा आगे बढ़ाते हैं, and let me talk a bit about human behavior and environment. Let us talk about human behavior modification. This is naturally a new terminology. Behavior modification, what does it mean exactly? Behavior modification से हमारा मतलब ये है कि हम इंसानों के बिहेवियर को किसी तरह से चेंज करें, उनको थोड़ा सा बेहतर बनाएं. अब इसकी एक समझने के लिए जो बेहतर एग्जांपल मेरे जहन में आती है, you can imagine a young kid. Let us suppose that this young kid goes to school every day, but after all of the efforts of the teachers and parents, he's not being a good student. He always brings back bad marks and bad remarks from the teachers and parents and brothers and sisters. Everybody is unhappy with this kid. The question is, what is wrong with this kid? When you try to fix up the problem of this kid, you first of all rule out that if there is any biological deficiency, which means if there is any IQ related deficiency. In 99% of the cases, you'll find out that there is hardly any biological deficiency, but it is actually the behavioral pattern of these kids. There is some kind of wrong learning in the behavioral pattern of that kid. Maybe that kid is having problem understanding things. शायद उसको concentrate करने में थोड़ा सा time लग रहा है, या शायद स्कूल का माहौल इस तरह का नहीं है कि वो बच्चा उस माहौल के अंदर concentrate कर पाए. शायद हमारे टीचर का बिहेवियर उसके साथ सही नहीं है कि उसके ऊपर कॉन्सेंट्रेट कर पाए. अब अगर हमने उस बच्चे के मसाइल को फिक्स अप करना है तो हम बात कर रहे हैं बच्चे के बिहेवियर के बारे में. द वे ही अप्रोचेस स्टडीज. प्रीवियसली व्हेन ही इज अ प्रॉब्लमैटिक किड, एवरी टाइम ही अप्रोचेस स्टडीज, he has a bad feeling about it. He kind of feels disgusted about it. He doesn't want to go close to the books. This is an attitude in that kid. Why that attitude is there? Maybe the parents are responsible, maybe the teachers are responsible, maybe the polluted environment is responsible. But this is naturally and essentially a problem of behavioral pattern. What do we do with this kid? We change his behavioral pattern. और जब हम उसके behavioral pattern को change करने की कोशिश करेंगे तो हमें पढ़ाई को उस बच्चे के लिए बहुत ज़्यादा attractive बनाकर किसी तरह से पेश करना है. इसको हम किस तरह से करेंगे? इसमें naturally teachers भी involve होंगे, parents भी involve होंगे, और इसके अलावा बहुत से दूसरे सोशल, फाइनेंशियल, इकोनॉमिकल फैक्टर्स भी इस चीज़ के अंदर आ जाते हैं. सो स्टूडेंट्स, इस डिस्कशन का मकसद बुनियादी तौर पर यह था कि मैं आपको बता सकूं कि बिहेवियर मॉडिफिकेशन तकरीबन 99% मसाइल का हल होता है. मिसाल के तौर पर जो सैनिटेशन रिलेटेड प्रॉब्लम्स इन आवर कंट्री, इफ़ यू गो टू द स्मॉल विलेजेस यू विल फाइंड आउट दैट अ लॉट ऑफ डर्टी वाटर इज़ बीइंग स्पिल्ड इनटू द स्ट्रीट्स. और स्ट्रीट्स के अंदर आपको अमूमन गंदे पानी की नालियाँ नज़र आएंगी, और गंदे पानी की नालियों के अंदर आपको बाज़-औक़ात साफ़ पानी को ले जाने वाले लोहे के पाइप्स भी नज़र आएंगे. और उन साफ़ पानी ले जाने वाले लोहे के पाइप्स में अगर किसी जगह पे लीकेज है तो वो गंदा पानी नेचुरली साफ़ पानी के अंदर मिक्सअप होगा. द थिंग इज़, जब हम इस किस्म के मसाइल को देखते हैं, ये शायद ऐसे मसाइल हैं जो हमारी बिहेवियर मॉडिफिकेशन की वजह से चेंज हो सकते हैं, जो हमारे थोड़े से केयर और कंसर्न की वजह से चेंज हो सकते हैं. और ये केयर और कंसर्न हम किस तरह से डेवलप करें इन लोगों के अंदर, इसके लिए हमें ज़रूरत है कि हम कम्युनिटीज़ को मोबिलाइज़ करें और इंसानों के बिहेवियर को मॉडिफाई करने की कोशिश करें. सो पॉलिसी डेवलपमेंट्स आर इनकरेजिंग बट नॉट एडिक्वेट. we have been trying to change people's attitudes. We have been trying to regulate the business industry, not spilling so much toxic waste that we cannot control, but we have not been successful as yet. Matter of fact, we have been far, far away from the success so far. It's a long, long journey. So what we need to do, we need to have changes that will go far beyond one nation's responsibility. We need to sit down together and think that planet Earth is the only planet available to us. What are we going to do with this? And how can we bring up with the necessary changes and adjustments in our behavioral pattern as an individual, collectively as nations, then we can modify our behavior in a more environmental friendly fashion. Students, let us move at this point onwards to the subsequent part of our lecture. We have done enough discussion on environment. At this point on, let me tell you about some of the most important theories जो आपके लिए समझना बहुत ज़रूरी है ताकि आप environment के बारे में समझ सकें. जब हम इन theories को discuss करेंगे, you'll find out that we are mostly discussing the psychological perspective that is guiding the understanding towards better appreciation of human behavior, but we will also mix up the environment into it. And when we mix up environment into behavioral understanding, we are naturally talking about behavior modification. So let us move towards the theories of environmental psychology. Students, as you can see on the slide, यहाँ पर हम जो 5 theories को discuss करेंगे वो कुछ इस तरह से हैं. सबसे पहले हम historical influences में जाएंगे कि history के अंदर जो great thinkers थे, जो philosophers थे या जो great psychologists थे, how can we draw lessons from their theories? And then we are going to talk about some theories which are actually called the mini theories, and those theories would be like this. Number 1, arousal theory. Number 2, stimulus load theory. Number 3 is behavioral constraint theory. And number 4 is adaptation level theory. Students, आइए चलते हैं historical influences की तरफ. जब हम बात करते हैं historical influences की तरफ, तो मैं आपके माइंड को प्रिपेयर करना चाहता हूं कि आपको historical influences में भी कोई 4-5 theories को पढ़ना पड़ेगा, देखना पड़ेगा. Historical influences की तरफ जब हम जाते हैं, तो यहाँ पर सबसे important theory जिसका which you will find very interesting is called geographical determinism. We'll then talk about ecological biology, then we talk about behavior interactionism, and then finally we discussed gestalt psychology. Theories को discuss करने से पहले थोड़ा सा मैं आपको बताता चलूँ कि आप इन theories को 2 viewpoints के हिसाब से perceive कर सकते हैं. Number 1 is their scope. किसी भी theory का एक scope होता है. Scope का मतलब है the kind of problems that particular theory addresses to. मुख्तलिफ theories के scope को हम split कर सकते हैं like a certain theory has a broad focus, a broad scope, and that a certain theory has a very, very narrow focus. We can say when we talk about broad focus, that means a theory is trying to understand so many things out there that its natural framework is so vast, is so general in its nature that it could accommodate so much information. But when we talk about narrow focus means that a theory is specifically trying to understand a particular thing. So this is more like the difference between a generalist and a particular specialist. Specialist is always talking about a certain area. A specialist can tell you, say, the biological unit of the life, that is called cell, and a generalist might be a teacher of biology whose job is to understand so many different theories and convey those theories to the students eventually. So students, I hope you understand that there is a difference between generalists as well as specialists, and you can always correlate this difference with the point in a theory that could be narrow focus theory or a broad focus theory. Friends, the second point upon which you can perceive these theories, जिसकी बेसिस पे आप अपनी अंडरस्टैंडिंग को ज़रा बेहतर बना सकते हैं, is empirical and non-empirical. बाज़ theories empirical होती हैं और बाज़ theories non-empirical होती हैं. Now what is the word empirical? Yeah? Just say that. Practice it. It's a nice word. Empirical means scientific. Scientific theories. When we talk about science, science believes in data, which means whatever phenomena we are trying to understand, हमें उस phenomena को, उसकी happenings को properly document करना है, उनको numbers में convert करना है, and everything that we can convert into numbers, we can call it empirical. मिसाल के तौर पर हम अपनी general language में ये कह सकते हैं कि एक साहब बहुत लंबे हैं. लेकिन अगर हम इसको साइंटिफिकली कहने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं तो हम शायद इसको इस तरह से कह सकते हैं कि एक साहब की हाइट 6 फुट 1 इंच है, जबकि ज़्यादातर लोगों की हाइट तकरीबन 5 फुट 7 इंच से 5 फुट 10 इंच के दरमियान में होती है. So when we talk about these specifications in terms of numbers, in terms of inches and feet and different units of measurement, then we are talking empirical things. And when we are talking about general things, then we are talking about non-empirical data, which is not based upon the scientific data. So you can come to understand these theories with reference to their being empirical and with reference to their being non-empirical. These are two different points on a continuum, and no theory is 100% non-empirical and 100% empirical. There are always degrees of graduation. So students, let us move towards geographical determinism, environmental challenge and behavior response. Have you ever heard the name of the great historian Toynbee? Toynbee was a great historian, and he studied different civilizations in details, and he came up with different reports, different writings, which give us very good clue to how ancient civilizations were functioning. Toynbee came up with the idea that civilizations always face environmental challenges. मिसाल के तौर पर अगर हम बात करते हैं नॉर्थ पोल की, जब मैं वर्ड नॉर्थ पोल बोलता हूँ तो शायद आपके जहन में बहुत ज़्यादा बर्फ, ठंडक, पानी, समंदर, lack of any resources available in that place. That place is totally solitary and lonely. That environment comes to your mind. That environment poses huge challenge to its inhabitants, if there are any, which is why at the peak of the North Pole there are only research facilities where people go certain parts of the year and do their research. However, there are many different animal species on that part of the North Pole. However, we do not have any human communities living over there. So Toynbee came up with the idea कि किसी भी environment के जो physiological features होते हैं वो civilization की growth को impact करते हैं वहाँ पर. Which means environment features such as topography, climate, vegetation, availability of water present challenges to its inhabitants. Like in a desert, there is very little water. You'll find out people's behavior changes over there. Their behavioral patterns are quite different. People living on heights, mountains, they come across totally different challenges being imposed upon them by the environment. People living in the land areas where agricultural communities are living, they till the land, they grow up the crops. You find out because of their particular environmental challenge, their lifestyle is quite different from the people who are living in the deserts or from the people who are living in the mountains. Now, Toynbee says that environmental factors determine that how much a civilization can progress and how much a civilization can deteriorate. He says, extreme environmental challenge leads to destruction of a civilization. Little challenges lead to its stagnation. किसी environment में अगर बहुत ज़्यादा extreme challenge हो, like the environment in the North Pole, तो civilization वहाँ पे destroy हो सकती है. Like we don't find any civilization existing in the North Pole. लेकिन अगर किसी environment के अंदर challenge बहुत ज़्यादा कम हो, then that culture can eventually get into stagnation. Which is probably why we can make up an observation that people in the well-provided countries, in the developed countries, probably might not be that hardworking because they are not finding so much challenge in their environment. But remember, that is just a hypothesis. That is just a viewpoint that I am giving you right now. So I hope this is not taken as an offense by someone. Just to clear the point again, that environmental challenges shape up, make up the nature of a certain civilization living in that particular environment. And Toynbee said that extreme environmental challenges lead to destruction of a civilization and little challenge leads to its stagnation. Now, Toynbee thinks that intermediate level of challenge is always good for a civilization to grow up. When there is intermediate level of challenge, which means not too much, not too less, but it just keeps people on their toes. People go on progressing. There is always some stimulus for them to progress, to develop, to grow up. Students, with reference to this theory, let me talk to you about two different types of cultures. One type of culture let us take agricultural cultures. And the other type of cultures, let us say nomadic cultures. What is agricultural culture? People who live and work together, grow up lands, crops in the lands. There have been great agricultural civilizations who have been surviving near the river basins. And these great civilizations have been the centers of progress and development. Now, if you look at these agricultural civilizations, you'll find out that in agricultural civilizations के अंदर बच्चों को grow up करने के methodologies और बच्चों के अंदर किस किस्म के traits होने चाहिए, उनके बारे में choice is absolutely different from the way the nomadic cultures would raise up their kids और वो जिस तरह के traits अपने बच्चों के अंदर चाहेंगे. एग्रीकल्चरल सोसाइटी के अंदर सब लोग एक कम्युनिटी की तरह मिलकर काम करते हैं और जब सब लोग एक कम्युनिटी की तरह मिलकर काम करते हैं दैट मीन्स दे हैव टू बी वेरी डिसिप्लिन्ड, दे हैव टू बी वेरी वेरी ऑर्गेनाइज्ड बिकॉज एवरीबॉडी वर्क्स लाइक अ टीम. सो एग्रीकल्चरल सोसाइटीज ऑलवेज अप्रिशिएट strict discipline and organization, which means they require more structure in their ways of behaving, they require more discipline in their ways of behaving. You'll find out even anywhere you go, you'll find out that farmers usually get up earliest in the morning. You'll find it out everywhere. And farmers carefully monitor the weathers throughout the year. साल के अंदर जितने weathers होते हैं उनको monitor करने पड़ते हैं because they need to grow up their crops. And in order to grow up their crops, they have to be watchful of the seasons. Okay? And land is a big resource, and when the crop is being cultivated, then a lot of people need to work like a team. It has been seen, observed, that when farmers, agricultural societies want their kids to be more organized, they want their kids to be more disciplined, and simultaneously, they want their kids to be more respectful towards their elders. We may say that the negative outfall could be submissiveness. So, in agricultural society, emphasis is laid upon obedience, respect, and compliance in children rearing. Now let us go towards the nomadic cultures. What are nomadic cultures? Nomads means people who live like small communities and they are constantly moving from one place to another place. I could tell you, every time we talk about Islamic history, we say Islam started in the desert lands of Arabia within the Bedouin communities. Bedouin communities. What are Bedouin communities? These are communities of the people who are living in those deserts and they are constantly traveling from one place to another place in search of their resources to live. And most of the times the resources to live come from clashes, fights, robberies, ambushes. So nomadic communities have always been engaged in fighting and quarreling and earning their resources because nomadic culture grows up on a place where the environment does not provide a lot of good resources to support agriculture. So these people have to constantly travel. Now, since they are always trying to meet with the unpredictable challenging environments and the demands laid upon them by the environments are very heavy, like let's say in the desert, the temperatures rise up to extremes and people have to survive those temperatures. And if you go up in the mountains, the temperatures fall down to a point where it is very, very cold. So the behavioral pattern within these two areas would be kind of different from the behavioral patterns from the land area people. Now, nomadic people are not only facing all these environmental circumstances, but they are constantly moving from one place to another place as well. Now, let us see what kind of traits nomadic culture would like to see in their kids. They emphasize independence, resourcefulness in their children rearing practices. I can recommend you here reading about the great Tatar king Genghis Khan. If you can find out a good biography of Genghis Khan, you'll find out that how the children were being raised up in nomadic cultures and how they would always come to appreciate the great qualities of independence, initiative, fast decision making. Students, at this point, let me give you some glimpses into village life of agricultural area and mountain regions. I'm going to show you some pictures. Just watch the pictures carefully and closely. Just enjoy the pictures and just try to see what are the differences between the two types of pictures. Students, आपने तस्वीर देखी, मैं उम्मीद करता हूँ कि आपने एंजॉय की होगी तस्वीर. These are some really good pictures. लेकिन इन तस्वीर में आपने डिफरेंस देखा होगा कि मैदानी इलाकों में रहने वाले लोगों की ज़िंदगी किस तरह से है और पहाड़ी इलाकों में रहने वाले लोगों की ज़िंदगी किस तरह से है. हम कतन ये बात नहीं कह रहे कि मैदानी इलाके वाले बेहतर हैं या पहाड़ी इलाके वाले बेहतर हैं. हम दरअसल ये कहने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं कि लाइफ के अंदर डिफरेंस है, और ये डिफरेंस, इफ़ यू आर ट्राइंग टू perceive this difference with reference to the theory that we have just discussed, which came from Toynbee, then you can find out कि environmental circumstances किसी भी civilization के उसके लोगों पर बहुत ज़्यादा impact करते हैं और उनके individual behavioral patterns तक उनका impact होता है. So let's recap the Toynbee's theory. Toynbee said कि environmental challenges actually define the features of a certain civilization. अगर किसी civilization तो ऐसे एनवायरनमेंट के अंदर गुजारा करना पड़ रहा है जहाँ पर चैलेंजेस बहुत ज़्यादा हैं, तो चांसेस हैं कि वो सिविलाइजेशन डिटेरियोरेट हो जाए या वो सिविलाइजेशन क्रैश हो जाए, बिकॉज एनवायरमेंटल चैलेंजेस आर सो ह्यूज. लेकिन इसके साथ ही साथ अगर एनवायरमेंटल चैलेंजेस बहुत कम हैं, then that means the civilization can also disrupt. So Toynbee thought that for any civilization to grow up, there should be an intermediate level of challenging environment available to them, and that will always keep them on their toes and reason for them to work. Friends, at this point, let us move towards our next theory. Our next theory is called ecological theories. As you can see on the slide, these are the theories concerned with biological and sociological interdependence between organisms and their environments. Students, when we talk about ecological theories, we take species as organisms. There are many different types of organisms, and they are biological entities. As human beings, we are also biological entities. When we talk about ourselves as biological entities, that means the minimum bare requirements for us to survive are, number one, top of all, oxygen. We need constant supply of oxygen so that as a biological entity, we could breathe. We need food and we need water. Without these three things, we cannot survive. And our behavioral pattern with our environment will be decided by the way we try to get these things, we try to attain these things from our environmental resources available to us. So this way, we can look at human beings as biological entities. So there are so many different species on the planet Earth, and there are so many different biological entities. So we can say that organisms are integral to their environments. Organisms किसी भी environment का एक बुनियादी और लाजमी जुज़ होते हैं, क्योंकि environment उन organisms के साथ मिलके interaction में जब ecosystem को shape up करते हैं, तो हर चीज़ एक दूसरे से interdependent है, हर चीज़ एक दूसरे से interrelated है, और किसी भी चीज़ पर जब फ़र्क पड़ता है तो सारे environment के ऊपर उसका फ़र्क पड़ना शुरू हो जाता है. The relationship between the organism and the environment is based upon reciprocity, which we already mentioned, that impact on one species creates impact on another species, ultimately creates impact on the environment. Students, at this point, let me tell you that different organisms in an environment constitute a total system, and changes in one single unit are assumed to change the nature of the entire system. As you would have read it on the slide, that changes in one system produces changes in the entire system. So when we will be talking about the ecological theories, we'll always be talking about organism's relationship to its particular environment. This was ecological theories. Students, let us talk about the next theory, which is behavior interactionism. What is behavior interactionism? A central question for behavior interactionism theorists has always been, are we made like this, or did we learn it from our environment? क्या हम इसी तरह से पैदा हुए थे या हमने इसे अपनी एनवायरनमेंट से सीखा? क्या एक बच्चा बड़ा होकर लीडर इस वजह से बनता है कि उसके अंदर नेचुरल बॉर्न लीडरशिप स्किल्स थे, या फिर उसके जो बुनियादी टैलेंट्स हैं उन्होंने एनवायरनमेंट के साथ कुछ इस तरह से इंटरेक्ट किया कि लीडरशिप स्किल्स उसके अंदर ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा पैदा होने शुरू हो गए। तो स्टूडेंट्स, बिहेवियर इंट्रैक्शनिस्ट के लिए ये बात बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट थी ये समझना कि इंसानों का बिहेवियर दरअसल किन अवामिल के ज़रिए मिलकर बनता है। Friends, this was a little bit of discussion about behavior interactionism, but I'm afraid we are once again running short of time. And in our next lecture, we'll talk about behavior interactionism. So let me give you a small recap of our lecture. आज के lecture में हमने discuss की environmental theories के बारे में, और यहाँ पर हमने Toynbee की theory को discuss किया और हमने ecological theories को discuss किया. इंशाल्लाह हम अपने अगले lecture के अंदर the rest of the theories of environmental psychology उनको हम डिटेल में डिस्कस करेंगे। स्टूडेंट्स, उम्मीद करता हूँ कि आपने एंजॉय किया होगा, और ये भी उम्मीद करता हूँ कि आप अगले लेक्चर तक खुश रहेंगे, अपना ख्याल रखेंगे, अपने दोस्तों का, गिरदोनवा के लोगों का, सबका ख्याल रखेंगे। एंड आई वांट यू टू कम बैक टू द नेक्स्ट लेक्चर इवन मोर एक्साइटेड एंड हैप्पी। थैंक यू वेरी मच। अल्लाह हाफिज़।